AITA for finally charging my friend who always forgets their wallet. This time I also pretended to have forgotten my wallet. For months, my friend Jake had been pulling the same stunt every time we went out to eat. It started off as a minor inconvenience, something I brushed off without much thought. The first time it happened, we had grabbed dinner at this little burger place we both liked. When the check came, Jake patted his pockets inside. "Damn, dude, I forgot my wallet. I'll get you next time." I didn't think twice. It was an honest mistake. I covered it, and we moved on. But then it happened again. And again. Each time, the routine was identical. We'd order, he'd get whatever he wanted, sometimes even suggesting extra appetizers or a round of drinks, and then when the check came, his hands would go straight to his pockets in a sudden, dramatic realization. "Oh, man, I did it again," he'd say, shaking his head like he was just as shocked as I was. At first, I thought it was just bad luck. Everyone forgets their wallet sometimes. But after about the fifth or sixth time, I started to notice patterns. He never once forgot his phone. He never forgot his keys. Just the wallet. And yet, he always promised to pay me back. "Next time," he'd say with a grin. But next time never came. I wasn't struggling for money, but that wasn't the point. The point was that Jake was taking advantage of me, and he knew it. The worst part was that he never even seemed embarrassed about it. He would laugh it off, make some joke about how I was such a good friend, and then move on as if it was completely normal for a grown man to consistently forget his wallet and mooch off someone else. One night, after yet another meal I had covered, I decided to test something. I planned it carefully. I invited him to a cafe, a small, low-key place where I knew the bill wouldn't be too crazy. Before leaving my apartment, I made sure to leave my wallet behind. This time, I was going to see exactly how far Jake was willing to take his little game. We got to the cafe, ordered our drinks and some snacks, and sat there chatting. I waited, letting things play out naturally. When the check finally arrived, I reached for my pocket, then stopped. I frowned, patted my other pocket, checked my jacket, and sighed. "Damn, I forgot my wallet. Can you cover me this time?" The second the words left my mouth, I saw the shift in his face. He let out a nervous laugh and scratched the back of his head. "Oh, yeah, man, that's crazy, because I actually don't have money either." I leaned back in my chair and just stared at him. "You don't have money? At all?" He hesitated, fidgeting with his phone. "Yeah, I mean, I was gonna hit the ATM later. I wasn't planning on spending anything right now." The silence between us stretched. I knew for a fact that he had just gotten paid. We had literally talked about it the day before. He had even mentioned buying some new sneakers. And yet, suddenly, he was completely broke. I said nothing, just watching him squirm. The waitress came back, standing beside our table with a polite but expectant expression. "Will this be cash or card?" she asked. Jake hesitated again, then sighed dramatically and reached into his pocket. "Oh, wait, actually," he pulled out some bills, flipping through them before setting the exact amount on the table. His jaw was tight, his entire demeanor different from his usual carefree attitude. I watched as he paid, grumbling the whole time, as if I had just asked him to donate a kidney. He barely looked at me as we left the cafe, and for the first time in months, I didn't have to foot the bill. But I wasn't done. That night, I went through my bank transactions, scrolling back through months of charges. I pulled up every single meal I had paid for, every dinner, every coffee run, every casual lunch that I had covered without so much as a thank you. Then, I put it all together in one long, detailed message. I even included screenshots of the charges, just to make sure he couldn't deny it. When I was finished, I sent it to him along with one simple message: "Since you always say you'll get me back, here's your total. Venmo works." The message was marked as read almost immediately, but there was no reply. Then, a minute later, I saw the notification. Jake had blocked me. I sat there staring at my screen, not even surprised. He hadn't even bothered with an excuse. No argument, no half-hearted attempt to defend himself. Just a straight-up block. And honestly, I didn't miss him. Update 1. So, after Jake blocked me, I thought that was the end of it. He was out of my life, and I figured I could move on without having to deal with his freeloading nonsense ever again. I had given him every chance to do the right thing, and instead of owning up to his actions like an adult, he had chosen to run away. That should have been the last of it. But nope. Turns out, Jake wasn't the type to just disappear quietly. Instead of facing the fact that he had been exposed, he decided to take the coward's route, running his mouth to our mutual friends, twisting the story in his favor, and painting himself as the victim. At first, I didn't even realize it was happening. It started subtly, little shifts in how certain people interacted with me. A couple of friends who I hadn't talked to in a while suddenly seemed different, responding to my messages with vague, one-word answers, or just outright avoiding me. Conversations that used to flow easily now felt forced, awkward. A few times, I noticed people exchanging glances when I joined a group, subtle but telling. I brushed it off at first, assuming I was imagining things. But then Ashley, one of the few people in the group I actually trusted, sent me a screenshot of a rant Jake had posted in our group chat. I opened the message, expecting to see some half-hearted attempt at defending himself. What I saw instead was Jake going off, playing the victim, acting like I had somehow done him dirty. He was calling me obsessed with money, saying that I was keeping tabs like a psycho, and making it sound like I had been tracking every single cent out of some weird, personal grudge. He conveniently left out the part where he had been freeloading off me for months, of course. In his version of events, I was the one who had overreacted. I was the one who had blindsided him with a ridiculous bill and demanded repayment out of nowhere. And the way he framed it, it sounded like I had been secretly hoarding receipts for years, waiting for the perfect moment to drop some grand, vindictive invoice on him. As I scrolled through the messages, it became painfully clear that Jake had been working overtime trying to twist the narrative. He wasn't just downplaying what had happened, he was actively lying. He had told everyone that I had randomly sent him a Venmo request for hundreds of dollars out of nowhere, acting like he had been completely blindsided. He made it sound like I had been plotting this for months, like I had some weird vendetta against him, like I had been lying in wait just to ambush him with a bill for every fry he had ever eaten. And the worst part? Some people believed him. A few of them immediately jumped in, agreeing with him, feeding into the narrative he was spinning. "Yeah, that's weird as hell, who does that?" someone had commented. "Friends don't nickel and dime each other, dude," another person added. They didn't know the full story, and Jake was banking on that. He was hoping no one would question him, that they'd take his word for it and turn against me without a second thought. He wanted them to think I was petty, that I was bitter, that I was the kind of person who would destroy a friendship over a few meals. And the people who didn't know me well enough? They were falling for it. At first, I wasn't going to say anything. I figured it wasn't worth the effort. I knew the truth, and anyone who actually knew me would see through Jake's bullshit sooner or later. But then I saw one specific message from Jake that made my blood boil. He had typed out, "It's not my fault OP is so desperate for cash. If he needed the money that bad, he should have just asked instead of pulling this petty shit." Desperate for cash. The guy who had been eating for free on my dime for months was calling me desperate. That was the moment I decided I wasn't just going to let this slide. Jake wanted to talk. Fine. I had all the receipts, and I wasn't afraid to use them. So I did what any rational person would do, I dropped the receipts. In the same group chat where Jake had been running his mouth, I sent every single screenshot I had. I started with the messages where Jake had promised to pay me back, where he had explicitly said, "I'll cover the next one," and then conveniently forgotten every time. Then I sent the final tally, with each date, each location, each charge. I laid it all out, clear as day, with timestamps and details that made it impossible to deny. There was no room for him to twist the story anymore. The facts were right there in front of everyone. The chat exploded. At first, there was silence. No one knew what to say. Then, one by one, people started reacting. The first responses were just shock, people typing out messages, then deleting them, then typing again, like they didn't even know how to respond. A few of them even admitted that they had thought I was exaggerating at first, but now that they could see the truth laid out in front of them, there was no denying it. Others started calling Jake out directly, saying things like, "Dude, this is straight up scummy," and, "So you just never planned on paying him back." A few people tried to defend him, saying that it wasn't that big of a deal, but those arguments fell apart pretty quickly when the proof was staring them in the face. Then, something I hadn't expected happened. One of our friends, Chris, spoke up and admitted that Jake had pulled the same stunt with him before. Chris hadn't said anything at the time because he thought it was just a one-time thing, but now he realized Jake had been running the same scam with multiple people, just cycling through different friends until they caught on. That was when the floodgates opened. More people started chiming in, sharing their own stories. Someone mentioned how Jake had once forgotten his wallet at a bar, conveniently right after ordering the most expensive drink on the menu. Another friend said Jake had invited them out to lunch once, then suddenly remembered he was short on cash when the bill arrived. It was the same pattern, over and over again. Jake tried to backtrack. He started typing out long, frantic messages, trying to spin things in his favor, saying I was blowing this way out of proportion and that friends shouldn't keep score. But it was too late. No one was buying it anymore. His usual excuses, the fake innocence, the act, none of it was working this time. The final blow came when someone asked him point-blank, "So were you ever actually planning to pay OP back?" Jake didn't answer. He just left the chat. Then he left our friend group. Update 2. I did not expect to hear about Jake again after he bailed on our friend group. As far as I was concerned, that entire chapter of my life was over, sealed shut, never to be reopened. The moment he left, it felt like a weight had been lifted, like the collective patience of everyone he had leeched off had finally snapped, and the universe had corrected itself by erasing him from our social circle. He had been exposed, burned every bridge, and vanished like a ghost. No apologies, no accountability, not even a last-ditch attempt at damage control, just pure, unfiltered avoidance. That should have been the last of it. But people like Jake never really go away. They linger in the corners of your past, waiting for just the right moment to claw their way back into your life in the most unexpected ways. When my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number, I almost ignored it. It was late, and I was curled up on my couch, halfway through a mindless TV show I was not even paying attention to. Spam messages had been relentless lately, so I assumed it was another one, something about an urgent package I had never ordered or a sweepstakes I had never entered. But then I saw the name attached to it, Laura. Jake's girlfriend. Or at least, the last I had heard, she was still his girlfriend. I froze for a moment, trying to piece together why she would be messaging me out of nowhere. We were not friends. We had never been close, never had a real conversation beyond surface-level niceties. She was always just there, an extension of Jake, someone I had acknowledged but never truly interacted with. So when I saw her name, confusion settled in. And then I opened the message. I need to know the truth about Jake. That was all she had written. No context, no introduction, nothing to soften the blow. Just a blunt, almost desperate demand. My heart started beating faster, because I knew, instantly, where this was going. After the chaos of the group chat, after every detail of Jake's freeloading had come to light, I had not given much thought to how it might affect his relationship. I had assumed he would spin his usual web of lies, convince Laura it was all a misunderstanding, and keep up the act. But now, staring at her message, I realized something had changed. She was asking me for the truth, which meant, at the very least, she was starting to doubt him. And if she was doubting him, it meant she had seen something that made her question everything she thought she knew. Apparently, after the fallout in our friend group, things had not been sitting right with her. She had started noticing little things, details that had always been there but had never seemed important until now. Like how he never paid when they went out. How every time the check came, he always had an excuse. His card was not working, he had forgotten his wallet, he had meant to grab cash but just hadn't gotten around to it. At first, she had not thought much of it. It was just Jake being forgetful, just bad luck, just the kind of harmless quirk that did not raise any red flags. But then she started paying closer attention, and the pattern became impossible to ignore. The real kicker was that Jake was suddenly broke. Conveniently broke. He was always complaining about money now, constantly talking about how tight things were, how he needed to be smarter about spending. But despite that, he never actually seemed to struggle when it came to buying things for himself. He always had money for video games. He always had money for weed. He never seemed to hesitate when it came to spending on things that benefited him directly. It was only when the expense involved someone else, when it was his turn to pay, when the cost of something could not be brushed off onto another person, that his finances suddenly became a problem. She was starting to put the pieces together, and she asked me outright if Jake had ever borrowed money from me. I was not about to sugarcoat it. I laid everything out, every detail, every instance of him mooching, every meal I had covered, every time he had promised to pay me back and never did. I told her about how he had blocked me the second I asked him to actually settle his debt. I told her how he had tried to spin the story in his favor afterward, twisting the truth so he would not look like the piece of garbage he really was. She did not even seem surprised. She just seemed tired. As if she had already known, deep down, but had needed to hear someone else say it out loud to confirm it. She thanked me, and after a long pause, she finally responded with, "This explains a lot." That was the last I heard from her. 2 days later, Ashley told me that Laura dumped him. Apparently, she had confronted him about everything. She had sat him down and asked him point blank why he was always dodging the bill, why he always seemed to have an excuse, why other people who were not even that close to him, had to be the ones to finally expose what he was doing. Jake, in true Jake fashion, did not own up to anything. He did not apologize. He did not even try to explain himself. Instead, he immediately flipped the situation back on her. He accused her of not trusting him. She was not having it. Update 3. I thought this story was over. Jake had dropped out of my life, our mutual friends had stopped mentioning him, and I had sincerely believed I would never cross paths with him again. It had been months since I had last seen his name pop up in conversations or group chats. He had vanished, and for the first time in a long while, I did not have to deal with the weight of his freeloading nonsense dragging me down. It felt like a closed chapter, one that I was more than happy to leave behind. But fate had other plans. It happened last week, completely by chance. I had stopped at a gas station on my way home, one of those quick errands where I was only planning to grab a coffee and some snacks before heading back. It was late, the kind of late where the air was crisp and the store was nearly empty except for the occasional customer passing through. I was barely paying attention as I made my way to the counter, reaching for a bottled coffee and a bag of pretzels, when I heard a voice that sent an immediate wave of irritation down my spine. Someone was arguing with the cashier, and it was not the kind of casual misunderstanding that happened when a card declined unexpectedly. The voice was frustrated, defensive, pushing blame where it did not belong. The words hit with an almost rehearsed rhythm, an excuse polished from overuse. "No, that can't be. Try again. I definitely have money." It took less than a second for me to recognize it. I glanced up, and sure enough, there he was, Jake, standing at the register with a couple of energy drinks and a pack of chips, his posture tense, his expression slipping between forced confidence and mild panic. The cashier already looked exhausted, like they had been through this before, like they knew exactly how this would play out. The moment his eyes landed on me, his entire demeanor shifted. First, there was the immediate flash of recognition, the flicker of something like fear when he realized exactly who had just walked in. Then came the nervous energy, the way his gaze darted around the store as if looking for an escape route. His face paled, then his jaw tightened, like he was trying to decide whether to acknowledge me or pretend I did not exist. I waited. I did not say anything, did not move closer, just watched as the scene unfolded. It took him less than 5 seconds to force a grin, to plaster on that familiar, strained expression that I had seen too many times before, the one that said he was about to pretend nothing had ever happened, that everything between us was fine. "Oh, man, what a meeting. How are you?" It was almost impressive, the way he could switch from desperate to casual in an instant, as if the sheer force of his confidence could erase reality. I could see the calculation happening behind his eyes, the wheels turning as he tried to figure out the best angle to take. He had already decided on his next move before I could even respond. He shrugged like he had not just been caught trying to pay for junk food with a card that would not work. "Oh, it's cool, it's just that the card is buggy, you know. Couldn't you just borrow a little while I figure it out?" And there it was. The same Jake, unchanged, untouched by consequences, hoping I would slip back into old habits and pull out my wallet like I always had before. There was no hesitation, no shame, just expectation. The idea that I would say no did not even seem to register as a possibility for him. I met his gaze, watching the flicker of impatience behind his forced smile. He was waiting for me to sigh, to roll my eyes, to brush it off and hand over a few bills like it was no big deal. He was waiting for me to fall into the same trap I had escaped months ago. I did not. The moment I made it clear that I was not playing along, his expression twitched. The act slipped just a little, enough for me to see the irritation underneath. Well, it's just a few bucks, man. I'd do the same for you. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. I had spent months covering for him, paying for his meals, his drinks, his good times, and the second I refused to be the ATM he expected me to be, his patience ran out. He was not embarrassed. He was not apologetic. He was just annoyed that it had not worked this time. He muttered something under his breath, something that sounded like frustration but was too quiet to make out. Then, without another word, he snapped, "You know what? Forget it. I'm going to leave anyway." He threw the drinks and chips onto the counter with just enough force to make a point, then turned and walked out of the store. No goodbye. No attempt to save face. Just an exit, as fast as possible, as if leaving the situation would erase it. I paid for my coffee, sliding a few bills onto the counter as the cashier sighed, already moving to put Jake's abandoned purchases back. The guy's been trying to act out the same scene for 10 minutes. He keeps saying it's some kind of bank failure. I shook my head, pocketed my change, and walked out without another glance in Jake's direction. Some people never change. But you know what? This is no longer my problem.